Hey folks, Philip Beeman here. It's a blustery winter Sunday morning and the shop is a mess, but I'd rather maybe do something fun today. So I'm going to try to rehabilitate my poor old powered loader that I used for many years. I now load my honey with an easy loader. But this thing's been kicking around and it's tying up space. I either needed to scrap it or fix it. Who knows, if it was in running condition, it might get me out of a jam one day. So we're gonna fire it up here. Also a great chance for me to play with my new welder. I've used a ancient stick welder for years and I decided it was time to get to the next level. So I got a nice wire feed, could be a MIG welder. I'm not going to use gas yet. I'm just going to go with the flux cord for this project. So I'll put it together. You'll get a bit of a sense of how this thing works. Ultimately, it's a lawn tractor differential axle and then a little, I think it's about a 5 horsepower Honda motor. And so we'll see how this goes. I don't know if it's going to be all done in one day, but we're going to take a shot at it. Okay, so I spent a little time assessing what went wrong with this thing, and it's hard to see. You know, I don't. This is not a matter of blame because this thing loaded a lot of honey. Like, I don't know if it's 1 million pounds, it'd be close, over about 20 years. So, you know, it lived a good life and it was a very important machine for me. But when I'm looking at why it failed, right at the bottom of the mast is where metal fatigue eventually got the better of it. And so I've cut out the piece on both sides, to one each mast that failed. And then I'm gonna hammer on a piece of tube over and I'll weld it around the bottom and cut it off and swap it in to beef it up a little bit. It's not going to be pretty. You know, if I ever have to use this thing, it'll be because something else pretty ugly has happened, and so this is not a beauty contest. So, but the general plan here is I'm going to swap in a slightly heavier, slightly bigger spec tube, and so we'll cut the pieces, weld it together, and we'll see what, you know, you can judge for yourself whether you like the results. Okay, so let's get cutting. I need this piece to be, so what I'm doing is figuring out the total length I need. So what's been cut out from the very bottom of the mast to the top, 18 and a half, let's call it. It's impossible to exactly judge the kerfs of the what's been ground out of it, but I can we build it from the bottom. So if I have 18 and a half, it's going to be close enough. All right, so on here. While that's cutting, I'll think about my next steps. I'll need some more of that tube on the other side, so I'm gonna have to flatten this out enough to get it inside the tube. So a little banging is going to be in order here. I think I'll do some of this by over tightening it in the vise. This tube was badly rounded, so with the ball peen hammer I've creased it down the middle of each side to kind of taper it down a little bit, so I should be able to get that tightly fitting larger tube over top. Okay, so this piece will fit onto the mast. This is this side, so it'll go in like that. I'll make another one for the other side. Where did that piece go? Oh, here it is. Okay, so let's see if this fits. Ooh, just a little touch more shape. Just got to be constantly checking for squareness of this. So that height is 5 feet to the nose. Okay, this is a little wrong. Yeah. You'll see here, I wanted to make this so that this motor bolted to these slots and I could slide it back and forth. Easiest way I could think of at the time to do that was just parallel bars. So then the motor bolts, 2 bolts here, 2 bolts here, and the tension of the chain, you can just move it back and forth here just slightly. And it needs to be welded to here and to there, and square, of course, to the transmission, or the chain will have stress on it. Okay, transmission's here. I got 1 bolt in, and now ooh boy, that's close. I think I can probably just torque that in there a little bit. Let's try. Oh, that was easier than I thought. Okay, let's get a nut on that. Put a few more in just to make sure it's not just a lucky guess. Okay, so now the key will be to tighten these up and finish the welding with those bolts kind of providing the final adjustment. that's, yeah, there's a little bit, I guess this looks like this tire has been pushed in here. This tire is tight on the frame, but I think that's adjustment on the hub. I better get some oil on that so I can fine tune that later. Oh boy, that looks pretty rusty. Okay, so I want to put a few welds on this and I clamp everything. Be nice to have those tires. I should tighten those right up. It'd be nice to have those tires off. Okay, so good news is I didn't have to take the hubs off to get the tires off. They were just bolted onto these hubs here. This hub will have to be adjusted out. I've got some oil soaking in there to make that easier when it comes. In the meantime, I can just get busy. Everything's bolted down on this transmission, everything's square. So I can do the final welds on this setup. But everything's tacked so far, so I can now get busy and clean, make solid seam welds and get it all kind of, the weight of the load gets transferred onto here. So this triangle has to be pretty strong. So and I think once we got that done, we're kind of in business here. Okay. There's some setting that I don't have quite right here. Now we're going. Now we are putting the mount for the motor on. I've got that squared with this magnetic square. So I want it, doesn't super have to be square to the whole machine. It's very important that it be square to the shaft on the transmission. You don't want two things that are connected by chain to not be anything but true to each other. So I think I've got this pretty much lined up. We'll tack it in place and then check square again, check again, tack, check until we really are happy with it, and then weld the whole thing down. Pretty light stuff some places. When I made this, I was trying to save my back by making the machine light. I could have used slightly heavier tube. It would have probably been better. Well, got a bunch of welding mistakes to fix, and places where the tube was weak, and I have to, slowly and carefully build that back up again. But you can see the basic shape of the thing now. The motor mounts vertically here. There'll be a chain that runs from the front of the motor to the front of the transmission. The transmission is adapted. It would have sat in a lawn tractor 90 degrees down with the sprocket off the drive facing up, and the motor would have been front. It would have been driven by a big belt. So the thing is, it's not exactly as intended, but as far as I can tell, the whole unit is packed with grease. I had two of these machines for about 20 years, and one of them I think was slightly preferred. I don't think it was this one. and I wore at least 2 engines out of that. And I think another beekeeper owns it now, and I understand it's still working well for them. And this one I think got slightly less use, but did load its fair share of honey. And the transmissions never gave a lick of trouble. I think I replaced the chains, the friction clutches many times, but the transmissions was never a problem. So the fact that it's not given its usual orientation doesn't seem to have been an issue. Okay, next step is to test fit the motor here.